What's up, Disobey? How's everyone doing? Anyone enjoying some beverages, maybe? What if I told you that social skills and being well-spoken is not a gift bestowed upon only a lucky few? What if I told you that social skills is something that you could actually practice and hone? That it was a skill that you could become better at it the more you do it? Well, this is something that I'm going to talk with you today. And let's see if you could maybe learn something from this, and hopefully I can change some minds. But if you look at the title of my talk, you notice that it's about hacking hearts and minds. So just to make you feel safe and ensure that I'm not here actually to play any mind games on you, I will not hack your brains today. I will not make you do stuff that you shouldn't. It's not that kind of talk. So, who am I? My name is Joakim Tauren. I am ex-developer turned sysadmin turned IT manager, security manager, and now I am the CISO for the small business segment at Visma. I work at Visma, which is a big conglomerate with about 15,000 employees. We have over 700 software development teams. We have over 6,000 developers. We have about 200 companies in the conglomerate, and these are the companies that we are then helping in group security. So in Visma, the security team centralized are there to help all the companies in the conglomerate. And what we do is we provide methods and tools for them to make better security decisions. And as you can see here on my character sheet, my hacking skills are +4, not very good. But my fundraising abilities are +9. And my influencing skills are +8. So I would say I'm a bit better at talking than I am at actually doing stuff. All right, so a long time ago, when I was younger, because I'm already quite old, I really didn't have any career aspirations. I was basically just doing the 9 to 5, just going about my day, coming back home, maybe play some video games, sit on the couch, not do much. And I was kind of like just chilling, taking it easy. I really didn't do much when it comes to my career or improving myself. And then I met my wife, and sometimes when you meet someone, things happen. And this happened. So we suddenly had a child. And in me, the instinct was, I probably need to do something about my career. And I probably need to figure out what I'm going to do, because I need to provide for children now. I'm responsible for them. I need to make sure they have food on the table, a roof over their heads. So what I did was I started to think about, okay, how can I make myself better so that I then can, improve my career. I wasn't looking at excuses or why my career isn't going somewhere. I was just looking at me. Why am I not doing well? So then I figured out that, okay, back in my early career, I never really finished school. So I went back to school, and I finished school. I got a diploma and now I'm a Bachelor of Engineering. And of course, that diploma hasn't done much to me, actually, but I have it now, so I finished something, so that's good. But another thing that I realized at that current job was that I was the IT/security manager, but I didn't have anyone reporting to me. I had no people that worked directly for me, but I had a lot of people that I needed to do stuff. I had developers that needed to fix vulnerabilities. I had developers that needed to do all kinds of things. And then I stumbled upon this book, Influence Without Authority. And it really clicked with me because I realized that through creating influence with the people that are doing these things, that I need them to do other things. If I create influence with them, I can make them do stuff without being their boss, if they just believe in why we are doing it and why we should do it. So I read this book, and it really hit home for me. And I really, after that, things really started to happen for me. And then I also started to take to stages, because one of the reasons is obviously if you go talk on a stage, you will be seen. That's a good thing. But also you can practice communication. And if you can practice communication in a good way, you always try to improve the way you speak, the way you present your ideas. And for me, that was really a really good practice to get better at public speaking and get better at communicating, because then I could work on how to present my idea, how to structure it. My mind was a bit of a storm before I started using slides to more or less structure my ideas. And then I was also quite lucky in my career that I had really good mentors. One of them, called Joakim, he taught me how to speak to managers, basically, how to present things to a CEO, how to sell something to them, how to present numbers when you're presenting an idea, how to get it through. And that really helped me quite a bit as well, because it's also a lot of times when you're speaking to a CEO, for example, you won't get a lot of minutes. So then you have to present your idea quite quickly and quite clearly. So then you have to make the most of it. And the other person is actually also now my current boss. He taught me quite a bit about social things, agendas, and reading between the lines of certain statements, and all kinds of other Game of Thrones stuff that are very interesting. I won't go too deep into that today, but they're kind of fun to learn about, and maybe one day we'll speak a bit more about those as well. And then one of the key turning points in my career where I really started to practice, sort of super practice my social skills, was when we had this thing called the security self-assessment. And basically what that was, it was a list of questions for each development team. How are you doing this? How are you doing that? How are you doing this? And I reviewed probably 200 security self-assessments within a year. And sometimes I had maybe 4 or 5 during one day. So I met with a lot of teams, and I really need to learn how to, read the room, read the people in them. I needed to learn how to speak to certain teams if they weren't really receptive towards the whole idea, if they wanted to get it done quickly, or sometimes if they were inquisitive, then I would, set up an extra meeting to discuss in even more detail. What I really tried to do is to make it, in general, just very fun for them. And for me, it was I actually didn't realize it at the time, but I learned really quite a bit about how to make first impressions, how to talk to certain people, how to read body language through a webcam, because most of these teams were all over Europe, and how to read facial expressions and things. And I kind of did it without even knowing it. But this was a super good practice round for me, and it was like doing some kind of a sprint in learning how to deal with bigger groups of people. And now, in 2024, as the CISO of the small business segment, the Visma. This is what I'm going to look like. This is what I look like. So if you can't see my face from the back row, at least now you can see it. And that's how I look like. And basically, now, after going through all of that and kind of being quite well-spoken, especially with certain people, and learning to influence the right people, I was able to become now the CISO of Visma, and I'm working a lot with CEOs, managing directors, boards. I am on a couple of boards as well in two of the Visma companies that we have. So social skills and communication is important, and it can really have a profound impact. So why am I here speaking to you guys about social skills and communication? Well, one of the main things is that I started mentoring also a lot of people. And what I realized is that most people, especially in the tech industry, they don't really necessarily think about social skills, actually at all. They don't necessarily think about communicating almost at all. And that is why I thought it would be quite interesting to then show you kind of the power of being able to communicate well, having influence on people, because not only does it help you in your career, but it can also help you have impact in the companies that you work. So you can get security prioritized, for example, in a team, or you can get security in the management team, and you can get security issues handled in a more prioritized way. So that's one of the reasons that I'm here, and hopefully you can now soon learn also a little bit about certain things. And I think probably, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you can relate to this picture. Is anyone here the introvert at the party, the wallflower, as we say in Finnish? What I thought about actually when it comes to social skills and communicating in general is that a lot of people, for example, think that I cannot be as fluent of a speaker, I cannot be as convincing as that person or that person. But if you really view it as a skill, something that you can practice, something that you can hone, you will never be perfect at it, but you can spend a lifetime learning and becoming better. And if you look at it that way, then maybe you could become a mind hacker. And I think this perspective, thinking of it as a skill that you can practice, because I know a lot of you here practice hacking skills every day, almost all the time, some of you, just day in, day out. Maybe you're hacking until 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, but you haven't really practiced your communication skills, your social skills, your influencing skills. And those are really something that can be quite powerful. You could be the best hacker in the world, but if you're doing it in your basement, nobody will ever know, unless you tell someone. And the way you tell it can also have a great impact on how you will be perceived. The other thing that is important, of course, as well, is mastering first impressions. Of course, it's not easy to be a master of anything, and I'm not saying you should become a master of first impressions. But it's a good point to think about. When you meet new people, how are you perceived? Do you meet them like this? That's maybe not the best first impression. Maybe you're smiling. Maybe you're happy about seeing them, and you're really engaged, you're listening to them. That's maybe a good way to create the first impression. And of course, you will not always make a good first impression with everyone, but at least you can mindfully practice and think of how you present yourself. We are actually communicating in a lot of different ways. And if you think of YouTube videos, the first 5 seconds are the most important in a YouTube video to see if someone will actually watch the entire video. And it's kind of the same, especially for people that meet a lot of people. The first 5 seconds are quite important. If you don't make a good impression, they will just walk away. The other thing is thinking about how you are perceived. And you might actually think that you're perceived in a certain way. And the gap between your own perception of reality and the reality of those that actually perceive you in another way, the gap can sometimes be quite large. You can actually think that, oh, I'm the smart, funny guy, but you might actually be the annoying damn bastard who always gives some rude comments or something. So maybe you need to think about it. And maybe you can ask people to tell you, how do you see me? But asking people how you see me, you can't just go like, okay, could you please tell me how you see me? That's not exactly how it works. You need to be able to build influence on someone, and you need to have a good relationship with them to be able to ask them how they perceive you, to get an actually honest answer. But this is also interesting to actually think about how you are perceived. And maybe you haven't thought about it before, but now is a good time to start as any. I was perceived at a certain point in my career as the joker. I was making funny jokes. But the downside with that is, yes, I might have thought that I was funny, but the downside of that is that people didn't take me seriously. So I could be in an important meeting. I could have really good ideas. I could have important things that I want to say. But because I was perceived as the joker, people didn't take me seriously. And they might not actually listen. So it's worthwhile to actually try to figure out how you are actually perceived. It might have a big impact on the influence and the power that you have in your words. And now we get to the core of it all. Communication. Communication is the foundation for a lot of things when it comes to social interaction and conversations. It's really important to communicate well and clearly. And what I have found is, for me, it helps a lot to, like I mentioned before, to, for example, use presentations, because when I use a presentation, I can then jot down my ideas, I can reorder them to make a cohesive entire narrative out of what I'm going to say. And as with any skill, practice makes perfect. Well, in communication, actually, probably you will never be perfect, but better. And the more you do it, the better you will become. And I know that some of you are probably looking at this picture and thinking, there's a couple of hackers. They're on their way wandering into the unknown, to this weird thing called communication. And then you realize, okay, maybe AI will not take over communication for all of us, but you will actually have to communicate yourself. But you can see that they're quite puzzled. Communication, what is that? How do we do that? And maybe you have been too. But if you realize that it's a skill that you can learn, and you can hone it, you can practice it, then you can become better. What I did also, when I started giving more talks, etc., I started self-exploring, kind of learning myself how to become a better speaker, how to communicate better. And one of the things that I found quite often, maybe some of you have also received this or thought this way. Maybe you're in a meeting, maybe there's some CEOs, other managers, you're explaining to them about a super dangerous vulnerability and they don't understand. Or maybe there's something else. Maybe we need a policy for security, but they don't understand. Or maybe we need a certain device somewhere in our networks, and you're trying to explain it to them, but they don't understand. One of the things that I never try to think is that it's not them. It's not their fault that they don't understand. It's the way that I'm explaining it. So I need to become better at explaining whatever I need to communicate to them so that they understand that this is important. So one of the important things with that is you have to learn to adapt the way you communicate. And if you communicate, for example, with managers, C-level executives, or board members, or developers, the way you communicate with all these different things, and sometimes even individuals within those realms, you need to communicate in a different way. And you really kind of need to try to find a balance. How much effort can you put into communicating with different types of individuals, with different types of characters? But it's quite important to be able to speak to the management team, but also, for example, to a developer. Especially in security, it's quite often the case that you need to explain to all levels. So then you need to be a good communicator. And the other thing that I started then to do is sort of learning myself. I started looking at YouTube videos and all kinds of things, how to present better. Here are two of my favorite ones that I quite often recommend to people. How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint by J.P. Phillips, and The Magical Science of Storytelling. I think the first one is the most important. It's to ensure that your PowerPoints don't look like death, full of text, etc. And you try to structure them in a better way. It's a really good video to watch to learn to become a better presenter. And the other is then about storytelling and how to do that in a profound way to become better at telling stories. And we are all actually quite good at telling stories. We just haven't maybe practiced it for a bit. Or maybe you have kids, so maybe you read books to them. And if you read books to children, you can't be super monotone and, oh, the furry animal crossed the road, and then you have to be a bit more lively when you read a book to a child. So you're actually all good storytellers. You just maybe haven't tapped into it yet. So the fun thing about storytelling and the power of it, and actually J.P. Phillips talks about it in the second video there. There was this significant object project. And what they did was they went on eBay and bought a bunch of items for $1. On average, the cost was $1. This horse's head was one of the items. And what they did for all those items is that they added a story. So basically, they just bought the item, added a story to the item, and then put it back for sale. And this horse's head cost $1, and it sold for $62. So someone who is very good at math can calculate the percentage of that. And that's basically just showing you how powerful stories can be. And of course, you can take this to security quite easily. You can tell stories about incidents, about things that happened. And if you tell them in a compelling way, you can, for example, quite easily convince people to maybe put more money towards security in your company. And even better if you can show a mugshot of the guy that did it. That's really powerful. And then you can tell a story of the person who did it. Then that is really powerful. But in general, emotional investment is a really powerful tool that you should use carefully. You shouldn't overuse it, but pretty much everything can be turned into a story. And one of the reasons to turn things into stories is that it's more compelling for the audience to listen. If you just produce and give out facts on a screen, it's not as compelling as if you produce facts and tell stories about the numbers that are there. So thinking about how you're presenting it and telling a story around it. And then, of course, there's the power of words in general. Depending on how you articulate, how you give tone, pauses, and all these different things. We actually had this, I don't know if you know, but I think remote code executions, they're pretty bad, right? But one of the things that we do quite advanced stuff in Visma, all right? We have super good security team, and they do a bunch of different things. One of the things we found, actually, just last week, was that there's a new attack. It's called remote network attack. And the way that this happens is that there is actually an intended feature in the RFC 1149 used by Starlink, which means that any network connected anywhere in the world, if it's not in a Faraday cage somewhere in a basement, can be exploited using this technique. Now you might be wondering, are you bullshitting me? Yes, I am. But my point here was that if you convincingly tell people some things, they can believe you. I'm not saying everyone believed me, but maybe there's a percentage of you that believed me for a while, at least, maybe. And that is basically the power of how you articulate and how you give more sort of tone to certain words when you're presenting. And not be super monotone like Kimi Räikkönen, the Formula 1 driver. The race was very good. Even though he's already so famous that everything he says is powerful. But you're not, so. And neither am I. All right, so how to build influence? You might be thinking, okay, well, I'll just get a camera and I'll start filming myself to YouTube. Well, that's one way, probably, but maybe not. Some people might be a bit camera shy, etc., etc. But influence, as I read from the book, Influence Without Authority, is actually just about creating relationships with people. You create trust. It's actually leadership without authority, and it's explaining why we need to do certain things. It's explaining why a lot. And through explaining things in a good way, communicating well, then you can build influence on people. And one of the quite unknown facts about influence actually is that if you ask for help, you will build influence. And it sounds kind of weird, but if you ask help from someone, your colleague, could you help me? You're actually building influence on them because you empower them. It's a bit more complicated than that, but I advise you to read the book. The other thing that's really fun in this social skill spectrum is lobbying. You might think, okay, that happens only in Brussels and Washington, D.C. They have a building next to the actual building when there's a lot of companies and they sweet talk politicians into doing stuff and they give them bribes. That's probably one way. But the other way is also, let's say you need to, the basic thing about lobbying that I think everyone should know, and it's a good thing if you know it, is that let's say you have a meeting in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. In that meeting, you need to have a decision made. And you have certain people that will be invited into that meeting. The basic thing is you have one-on-ones with every single one of those people that are there to make the decision. You convince them, you build influence on them, and you try to get them on your side. So then when you get to the meeting where the decision is needed to be made, everyone is already on your side. And then you just go in there, you present the thing again, and boom, decision done. That's one of the really basic parts of lobbying. And I think it's useful for most people to know that this is one way to also get shit done. The other thing is, if this is your data center, then it might be a good idea when shit hits the fan to actually ride the wave. And especially in security, when things are going wrong, but maybe you handle it quite well or you didn't handle it quite well, it's a good idea to try to utilize that to then, for example, get budget. Or maybe there's new legislation, there's new things. There's a lot of opportunities for you actually to get more budget into security work. You just need to see the opportunities ahead of you. So if the server room is on fire or the entire data center is taken for ransom, then that's an opportunity for you to maybe switch data centers, put things in a different place. Maybe it's better, more secure, etc. So seize those opportunities. And then lastly, tips of the trade. So, when you start learning about social skills, and you start learning about communication, you start learning about influencing people, and you become better at it, you can then find a lot of different opportunities within the company that you're working for. You might find different things outside as well. And it's really important that you try to think of it as a skill, something that you're learning along the way. You're trying to get better at it. You're improving yourself. You're improving the way you communicate, the way you influence people, the way you affect people. You're trying to become better. And there are a few tips and things that you can also, tips that I can give you now. One of those is also that if you think about how we communicate, we do not only communicate with our words and the way we speak, we also communicate with our bodies. So if I was like this, that means certain things. Maybe it means that my hands are cold, or maybe it means that I'm really serious. Maybe I'm sitting like this. What does that mean? Maybe I'm sitting like this. There's a lot of different things that you can learn from body language as well. And for me, I haven't really read any books about body language, for example. I just intuitively I've watched some videos and things like that, but you can also intuitively learn more about those things. And one really key tip when it comes to influencing is mirroring. What does mirroring mean? Well, if I, for example, meet someone, let's say I speak to them, and they sit in a certain way, maybe they have their hands like this, then maybe you can also have your hands like this. And of course, if you make it super obvious, it's not good. But mirroring in general, from body language, and also phrases and expressions, those can be really powerful. And also micro expressions. So if, for example, you want to build influence on someone and they're always using a certain word, like maybe flowers, so then you will also use flowers to describe certain things. Oh, these flowers in my pot, they're really nice. Yes, the flowers in your pot are really nice. I like them. I like flowers. And you, of course, need to be a little bit careful not to overuse it. But if they, for example, have a certain phrase or expression that they use quite a lot, just by using that phrase or expression, you're actually creating a lot of influence with that person. So that is kind of like my tip of the trade, that if you get into new situations with new people, maybe even just to make yourself feel comfortable, try to mirror the way that they act a little bit. Maybe they're dancing in a certain way, so maybe you want to dance in the same way. But yes, so thank you for listening. And remember, if the path ahead of you seems too easy, you're on the wrong path. And you should learn about social skills and communication to become better at it. It will give you power. You will become a better you. And more doors will open for you. And you will have more opportunities in life, hopefully. And maybe, just maybe, you'll create more impact in the company that you're working or for the customers that you're working for. Maybe you're a consultant. So maybe in the past, you as a consultant haven't been able to convince people that well, or maybe they don't understand. So maybe if you practice your communication skills, you can make them understand. And you can have that influence and that trust built so that you can have more power to you and seize and find opportunities where they are needed. Thank you.